Now, here's the thing. Let's be honest. We all knew the Vision was not going to last long. We all knew this would not be one of those longest running factions. This would never be best factions of all time level. This would not just be a faction that had like a huge impact on how factions move in the future, right? Great job, getting Bron and Bronson to the level they needed to be at. But as far as being a group that rivals the Bloodline, the Shield, Evolution, no. But did I expect them to so quickly turn on Seth Rollins? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I'll even go as far as to say, if anyone claims they saw this coming, baby, you must have a crystal ball. Because there's no way. If anything, on this past weekend with Crown Jewel, I would have expected to see something there if something was going to happen. With no interference and with Paul basically saying that Seth was on his own, I pretty much assumed that the whole Vision breakup would be around Rumble. At least that was the timeline I had because, baby, we had an agenda. The agenda was clear, and the agenda was Seth freaking Rollins versus Roman Reigns for the World Heavyweight Championship. And right now, that agenda is very unclear. And it has one reason and one reason alone. Bron Breakker. Before I get too ahead of myself though, let's start at the top of Raw. Seth Rollins starts off Raw, and while he's doing his victory lap of sorts, his victory speech even, he makes one big mistake that I noticed almost immediately. And he says, Seth Rollins doesn't need anyone. He brings up the fact that Roman Reigns needed the Shield. However, he continues to just boast that individually, Seth Rollins does not need Bron Breakker. Seth Rollins does not need Bronson Reed. Seth Rollins does not need Paul Heyman. All Seth Rollins needs is himself. And immediately, it reminded me of Damian Priest and Finn Balor during Damian's run as World Heavyweight Champion. If you remember, Damian said similar words about how the Judgment Day needed him. He didn't need the Judgment Day anymore. He did this all on his own. He didn't need them. And it's almost like every time someone tries to separate themselves from their group, the group breakup is upon us. But again, I planned on talking about that and going into how that announcing that can harm the group. That was what this video was supposed to be about. But at the end of Raw, as Seth's number one contender for his World Heavyweight Championships, CM Punk, is being absolutely destroyed, Seth comes out and he has his typical Seth grin, his typical Seth feels. He's feeling himself. He's on top of the world. Seth freaking Rollins is the face that runs the place. And as he's standing there with that World Heavyweight Championship held high, I did not even notice Bron Breakker. I did not notice Bron had moved to give himself a little bit of space to get his speed together. And when Seth turned and Bron absolutely gave him one of the most devastating spears that man has probably ever delivered in such a short space, I was floored. Because what do you mean? What do you mean we're at this point now? But there's one thing that I have to point out. Because if you saw my other video, I talked about how Seth was not a Paul Heyman guy and how I didn't think Seth should trust Paul. And I was wondering which one of them would be shown as the one who was the snake. Which one of them would turn on the other first? And I was absolutely wrong because it was neither one of them. It was Bron Breakker. If you look at the faces of Paul Heyman and Bronson Reed, they're floored. They're just as surprised as we are. They had no idea Bron was about to do this. And then Bron gives Bronson a choice. He straight up said, make your choice. Bronson had two choices. Choose Seth Rollins and have to possibly suffer the same fate that Seth just had, or go with Bronson because he doesn't need us, and actually we don't need him. We're main event guys now. We are the guys. We're doing things you've never been able to do. We laid out the bloodline. We laid out three of the top members of the roster, three members who used to wreak havoc on both Raw and SmackDown. We laid them out. Not you. We did that. They don't need Seth. Now, we've all heard about how little we saw the Vision actually benefiting Bron and Bronson. The Vision benefits Seth Rollins. I touched on that in my video as well. The vision was helping Seth Rollins more than it helped either of the other two men within the group. However, I expected them to kind of wait a little bit. I expected a tag team run, honestly. I just knew that they were about to grab those titles off of Finn and JD, and the vision was about to sport almost every single piece of gold Raw has. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And the thing about it that's the craziest is that they have now put everything that we as fans thought we knew, thought we could expect, into shambles. Because that Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins feud for Mania, it's up in the air. We don't know if Seth is even clear, because there is the possibility that Seth Rollins is injured with an injury from Crown Jewel when he did the coast-to-coast headbutt on Cody. Some kind of way he messed up his arm in the midst of it, and there's reports that Seth is wearing a sling outside of the ring. However, we can't trust Seth Rollins. We can't trust him. Seth even had his own daughter helping him sell his injury leading up to SummerSlam, to where we thought that there was no possible way Seth Rollins could cash in. So if he can go that far, is it possible that this breakup of the vision is just to throw us off? Is it possible that once again Seth is not giving us the truth behind his potential injury, that Bron is doing things on Seth's orders, that Seth ordered his own hit to make everyone fall into this false sense of security that the vision was over? I do think that one's a stretch. I've seen that theory a lot on social media. I think it's a bit of a stretch, but if it's true, the length Seth Rollins will go to fool us can never be questioned again. He will do whatever it takes to make us wonder if we know what's going on. So not only did Seth potentially ruin my future Mania match against Roman Reigns, what about War Games? What in the world is going to happen at War Games? Because again, that's been something I have very heavily been talking about. And if I'm honest with y'all, I actually was planning on recording a video next Monday on who I think would be on the War Games teams. And maybe I still will, but everything is up in flames, and it's a great thing, because I do think that for a while we were all getting too comfortable predicting what was happening. We knew what was coming, and this is exciting. It's fun. We don't know what's going on, but I'm also in shambles because what the hell is going on? It's a very weird situation, because now that the vision has been separated from Seth Rollins, what does the landscape look like as we head into War Games? We have so many potential options floating around, with Seth Rollins teaming up with Punk and Roman being one of the biggest ones. Big stretch. Again, I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I love it. I actually enjoy being wrong when it comes to predicting what the story is going to do, because it tells me that I am still just a fan at the end of the day and I don't know everything. But Seth and Roman and Punk all on one team locked in a cage together? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They'll kill each other before they even get in the match. There will be no match because they will be in there duking it out and the cage is locked. Why would we want that, guys? Why would we want that? But where does that leave us? If Seth Rollins is truly injured, I do not see Seth making it to War Games. Seth is completely off the board. But then that also begs the question of what happens with that World Heavyweight Championship. If Seth cannot compete, is he vacating it? Will we get a new champion? Is he going to hold it hostage and refuse to give it up? What happens with the championship if Seth Rollins is actually injured and unable to compete? Because that also changes War Games. We have Cody here. We have Roman. We have the Usos. We have LA Knight. We have CM Punk. All potentially being on one team. But that team can only hold 5 members. Where does that leave the Brons? Because now they're 3 people away from needing their full War Games team, because Seth Rollins is gone. Christina's gone. He's not here. They got rid of him. Again, I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know how I feel about Seth Rollins being out of the vision so suddenly, so quickly, when I had it mapped out months from now. I wanted a little more tension. I wanted a little more aggravation. I wanted to see things falling into place in Bron and Bronson's mind. And I mean, I guess I did. We'll circle back to that. Let me finish the War Games talk really quick, because as y'all can see, there is a lot of thoughts up here, and me having or potentially having a slight head cold is absolutely not helping me keep straight. I can't keep straight on a normal day when it comes to my thoughts, and this, yeah, it's just even worse. So if not Seth, who does the Brons team up with? Because it can't be MFT, because Solo and his crew have a whole new plan apparently. Judgment Day? The Wyatts, DIY? I genuinely don't know who joins the Brons inside those cages for War Games. And I know there's the idea of MFT and the Wyatts floating around, and while I personally would not necessarily be mad at that, I know a lot of people would, so I'm not touching on that one. The landscape of things has completely changed. We do not know what we thought we knew anymore, and while it's one part exciting, it's one part very scary, because what the hell is going on? Of course, I do want to take one quick second to say that if Seth Rollins is injured, I absolutely wish him the best and hope he's back in the ring soon. But if he's not, and if he is once again pulling one over on us, you are the architect and the visionary. It's no longer up for debate if you pull it off once again. But I genuinely don't think so. I don't think that that's what it is. I think that Bron has been peeping it for a minute, but it's also very confusing, because just a week ago on SmackDown, Bron was the one who was at Paul's throat about going to help Seth. Bronson has really just been more of the quiet type, more of the fall in line type. He's here to make himself be seen. He's here to help make himself a name. And that man faced off against Roman Reigns 3 times, beating him once. He's fine. He's good. He's moved up the levels that he needed to do. But Bron has always seemed to care a little more when it comes to Seth, I guess. Because when Seth went after Cody and Cody was able to switch it up and Paul was holding them back, it was Bron who looked so confused as to why he wasn't going to help Seth. At Crown Jewel, when Paul said, "We don't get involved," it was Bron who looked like he wanted to argue, who looked like he wouldn't dare turn his back on his tribal chief, for lack of a better term. I guess I could say his leader, but tribal chief just kind of hits differently, don't you think? So I'm confused. What has happened in the last week and a half that has made Bron Breakker turn his back on Seth Rollins as strongly as he did? I don't know, guys. I don't understand how we got to the break so quick. I mean, the signs were all there. The way Seth was talking, the way it was very clear about how the vision was there to help Seth Rollins achieve his goals and his vision for the company. And he was barely around them. But I guess I'm still just blown away at the fact that Seth got kicked out badly. I mean, if you look at the pictures after Raw, Seth looks like a lost puppy walking back up the ring. And he does not have his World Heavyweight Championship. You know why? Because Bron Breakker does. He took it with him. As him, Bronson Reed, and Paul Heyman walked out the arena. So I'm actually quite excited for Monday. I'm very excited, because what the hell is going on? What made Bronson choose this switch up so quickly? Outside of the obvious, where we all know that it just does not seem like Seth Rollins had his best interests in mind. What made Bronson decide to choose to agree with Bron? And if this is actually all Paul Heyman's plan all along, is Paul Heyman pulling one over on us and making us think that he had nothing to do with this time? Or is Seth Rollins just that much of a mastermind that he made his own, that he did his own turn and kicked himself out just to get everyone off his tracks? Y'all let me know how you're feeling down in the comments. What do you think was really the turning point for Bron Breakker? And how do you see this ending? Where do we go next when it comes to the Vision and Seth Rollins? Or does Braun Breaker got next after CM Punk for that number 1 contendership? If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like it, subscribe to my channel, and turn on post notifications so that you're notified every time I post. Until the last bell rings, bye guys.